Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here from Piers Morgan. They're going to war with this feminist over here, the far right blonde woman. Everybody on the panel is just ganging up on her. But we'll just start it off and skip through the most ridiculous parts. Get into it.
One of the reasons why women had to go into the workforce was because they had to help support their family.
Okay, I have a question for you, Clementine. It's a very simple question, but I think it'll be an interesting question to ask you. What is a woman?
Piers, I'm not going down the path of debating trans women with you.
I didn't mention trans women. I asked you what a woman is.
Okay, I'll tell you. But I know that because this is your tactic. This is what you do. What is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman is.
It shouldn't be controversial.
I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is someone who has at least at one point in her life felt scared of a man.
Sorry?
So, fatigue, feminist fatigue. Look, everybody's what?
So
but you never. But you guys.
Look at this. Everyone, the look on their faces. This is derangement.
I don't want to talk about that.
Hang on.
You guys never want to talk about that.
So any man who's ever felt afraid of another man is a woman?
No.
That's
not what I'm saying.
This is exactly why you're wearing that shirt that says repeal. You should put the 19th under it. It's unbelievable. What are you talking about? A woman, anybody who has ever at one point been afraid of a man, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Do you have an actual argument here?
Would you let me finish speaking?
How long is it going to take for you to finish? How long is it going to take for you to finish?
Yes, do you really just invite people on your show to be interrupted like this?
Well, Clementine, look, with all due respect, we did do a bit of research into what you said about me in the past, so I think I'm entitled to give you...
So you already know what I think about that question, because I've written about you asking that question.
Yes, you have. In fact, you said, like, all of the
why would you ask it again when you know what my answer to that is? I'm just
to enlighten the audience who have no idea what you're talking about, or me. Like all of the bigots, that's me apparently, currently jumping on the transphobic shuttle to Ding Dong Station. Morgan wants you to believe this is about fairness and equality, specifically fairness and equality in women's sports. That was exactly what it was about. And the problem is, Clementine, with all due respect to you, the reality is...
I doubt it. I doubt it's coming with due respect.
I'll treat you with perfect respect, but your inability to just simply state what a woman actually is, particularly given 2 weeks ago in the UK, the Supreme Court made it very clear that a woman is a biological female. That's it. It's a scientific fact. The fact that you can't answer that is part of the problem.
I'd like to know, the thing is that I would like to know why you, in particular, are so obsessed with this definition of what a woman is.
Because the world's gone crazy. We can't have a simple conversation rooted in biology, in the real world. In the last 15 years, we've had this woke agenda pushed down everybody's throats, and we're sick and tired of it because you could clearly look at any woman here on the panel and know that they're all women. We have 2 men, 3 women. Just because Andrew here shaves his beard, puts on lipstick, and wears a dress doesn't mean we need to tell or at least behave in the manner that he is a woman biologically. That's insane. Nobody cares what's going on in a brain, encased in this skull. That's ideas. Those are feelings. Those are thoughts. It has nothing to do. If you feel like something, you could feel like a dragon. You could feel like a wolf. You could feel like a spaghetti monster. It doesn't matter. Man or woman, you could feel whatever you want to feel in there. That doesn't mean that out here in the real world, you start to look like a spaghetti monster. You start to look like the thing you're feeling. That's not how it works. That's called a mental disease. That is an illness. It's that simple. Now, there's an illness upon society where we're forced to accept the illness is encased in the psychology of a person. That's all.
Firstly, how does it impact you in any way? Secondly...
Okay. And then we're going to move on to, they have more conversations about, what is a woman, and then the trad wife conversation. And then it goes into, this is Andrew's wife here from what I've been told, and that she is going to answer the question for the feminists of, do you work? They're kind of trying to catch her in a gotcha moment about marriage and its effects on women, emotional labor, all that stuff.
We're sending them to daycare and we're sending them to state-run schools, and that's who they're being raised by.
All right, Clementine, your response to that?
Do you work, Rachel?
No.
You don't make any money from your podcasting?
I make some money, but
I do. You do some form of paid employment.
Yes. First of all, my children are grown up now. I'm 44 years old, so I had my first one at 20. They're grown up. They're moved out. Yep. But I work still very, very part-time, maybe a couple hours a week at most.
But do you have...
Because my primary responsibility is to my husband.
But you've got 5 children, right? Is that correct? And they're all grown up and all moved out, or you've still got some young children.
The youngest one. The youngest
yeah, we
ones
still have
are
a couple
teenagers.
at home. And by the way, just making an argument from hypocrisy.
So can I just ask you? Can I just ask you? Do you find, even with the small amount of part-time work that you do, which you do get paid for, do you find satisfaction from that? Do you get satisfaction from that work?
It's not the money, because Andrew makes far more than I make. I make a very, very tiny amount of money off of, my book, and a couple of appearances here and there might sell a few books. It's practically nothing. If I was doing it for the money, it'd be a waste of even the couple of hours. But what I would say to that is, we're not against women doing other things. So if you look at the Bible and the Proverbs 31 woman, she does a lot of things. She's out buying land. She's making decisions. She's doing all kinds of things. The difference is that she's doing them under the purview of the guidance and leadership of her husband and for her family, not for a corporation, not for her own glory, not for her own ambition.
A lot of that depends on whether or not you have faith in the Bible, which obviously not everyone does. But the reason I asked you those questions wasn't because I was trying to set you up or anything like that. It doesn't surprise me that you would get some satisfaction. To me, the point of the question wasn't about the money. It's about the work. It's about the passion that you put into it. And the reason I asked was because a multi-year study done by Adrienne Freck and Sarah Damasque, found that the mental health of women who worked full-time after the birth of their first child was significantly higher than those who didn't have paid work at all. So I think that, taking into account the fact that for a lot of women, and this is also what Betty Friedan found when she wrote The Feminine Mystique, and Stephanie Coontz backed this up as well in her book, The Way We Never Were, which is a history of a
But are you
American
married,
family.
Clementine? I've no idea about your situation, but are you married? Do you have kids? What's your deal?
I've got a kid. I'm not married.
Okay, but you have a...
I'm a single mother.
Okay.
And I have a very excellent relationship with my son's father. We
of course you do.
co-parent together very well, but we're not married. We don't live together. I certainly have found, since having a child, I've always worked anyway, but I've been working since I was 13 years old, but I've always found that work for me is very satisfying. And what I'm saying is that these are the findings of multiple historians, anthropologists, scientists, that
these are the findings of diehard feminists who are only investigating this from a feminist point of view. They're already sold on the ideology, and what they do is they cherry pick data.
She's a world-renowned historian. She's not specifically a feminist. She's a world-renowned historian, and these were her findings as well. So you cannot deny the reality. If when you look at the facts of it, you cannot deny the reality.
Anything else? We're not saying women can never leave the house. We're not saying you can't have other things in your life that you find fulfilling.
You're suggesting that the primary role for a woman, and that, in your faith, I'm not going to discredit that, but your faith in God says that this is what you believe God says that you should be doing. But the primary role for a woman is that she should be staying at home, that she should be devoted to her husband, she should be devoted to her children. The facts do not back that up. The facts of familial satisfaction don't back that up.
Well, hang on. Okay, let me jump in. Hang on.
Yes, they do.
Hang on. Sorry, Clementine. I think you've chosen the wrong moment to say that. You've clearly got a woman here on the panel where the facts completely back that up. She's had a lot of kids. She's very happily married. She loves
that there would be exceptions to the rule, but statistically speaking,
you've just literally got one sitting there in front of you.
That's completely untrue, though. For her to say that this one study, that this one survey is going to tell us something. First of all, we have two.
It was a multi-year. It was a multi-year study.
Ma'am,
let me ask you, Clementine. Let me ask Clementine. When you were you married or not? I can't remember what you said. Were you married?
No, I've never been married.
Okay. But when you were with your partner before you broke up, who did the household chores and stuff like that? How did you delineate that as a feminist?
It was a struggle, because even in lots of supposedly egalitarian households, again, the data backs up that even women who make more money than their...
The data backs up, but she says that, I think she'll go on to say it's what her conversation looks like, that she did the chores. A diehard feminist, Clementine Ford, that said, I don't know if you guys are aware, but a few years ago when we were going through the pandemic, she said, I wish COVID was offing more men, and left the tweet up. I remember covering that on society's hatred of men. This is nuts. This is that woman that was wishing that COVID was erasing more men from planet Earth.
Partners or their spouses tend to do more unpaid domestic labor. Who did
most of the domestic chores
in my house?
Yeah, you did.
Me.
Okay, and Rachel, who does most of them in yours?
That's the reality for.
Well, hang on.
For most
Rachel,
women,
who does the domestic stuff in your house, Rachel?
I do absolutely all of it. And the thing I want to say to
So you're very similar.
Is,
I mean, it seems to me you're both.
I care far less about women's fulfillment in careers than I care about children and how they're being raised. And I want her to justify to me why we should be paying low-wage daycare workers to raise our children rather than doing it ourselves. How does it make sense to take your duty of motherhood and simply put it on a different random woman? How does that system make sense? Why should we tell women to do that?
If you would like to stay at home and raise your children,
you're not answering
totally
fine.
You're not answering the question.
My question is,
but
for children,
it's a question
for
of
them
choice.
to be raised by
it's a question of choice.
No, it's not.
It's actually not worse.
No,
it's not worse
Why
for
is
children
better outcome?
to be raised by working mothers. That's also
the answer is that not all women should be mothers. Just like not all women deserve to be married or are marriage material. You can say the same for men. Not all men are men. We know this as men, and not all men should be husbands or would make good husbands. It's a common sense thing to say that out loud. But you took a woman who clearly has animosity towards men. She had a child with a man who her relationship failed, and now they co-parent, raising I believe she has a son. Her child is a son in a household that's very venomous towards all things masculine. So what do you think the outcome of that kid will be? Now, how is it that a woman, this is a crazy conversation to even have, who's allowed to have children or not? Because clearly there's some people that shouldn't be parents, have no business being parents. So how do we as society, what do we say where you would make a bad mother and that you shouldn't be having kids? It's a better outcome for the kids to not be born at all, for you to just not procreate because you're clearly not mentally fit, right? That's a deeper rabbit hole that we're not going down, that they're not asking her, well, maybe you shouldn't be a mom in the first place. Maybe you shouldn't have had a kid. But, the argument from the other side will be, what's your God-given right? And, and then where does that conversation even begin? Interesting thing to think about.
The facts back that up. There is no
they don't. There's no facts.
Work,
listen, lady,
raise
there are
children
no
who
facts
are less happy. That is
there
not
are
true.
No facts on planet Earth that back up that single mother households have better outcomes. That's one. Two, that outsourcing your hang on. Let me finish, lady. If you outsource the raising of your children, you're already making yourself a single mother. Just so you know. Here's what's going on. Just so that you understand.
Are you a single father because your wife raises your children for you?
Lady.
Excuse me, don't call me lady.
Can you let me finish? Can anybody finish a point? Can anybody finish a point? Or
I don't know.
only
Do you have a point?
Are only you allowed to? I'm trying to make one. So
you don't seem to be making a point, Andrew.
If you outsource your children's raising to strangers, answer Rachel's question and tell her how that makes more sense than having the child raised by their own biological mother. Actually answer.
Well, in my case, it makes more sense because I need to make money to pay my bills to raise my child.
It's
but in many other families, it makes...
What if you depended on your husband's income?
Do you see the problem of how we ended up here?
Now it's my turn to finish. But actually, again, if you knew what you were talking about, if you actually read anything about the data on these things rather than just reaching into your gut for a feeling that feels true.
Let's go over the data. Show me the data that shows that if you outsource childcare, it's better.
There was a father in the household.
Let me bring Emily in because Emily's been hang on.
There is no statistical data to support the fact that children raised by mothers who work are less happy than children raised by mothers who stay at home.
Yes, there is. There's tons.
All the statistical data points to the fact that single mother homes are worse off for a child's outcome in life, from drug abuse to education to wealth creation to self-esteem to ambition to goals, literally everything, health outcomes, mental outcomes, earning outcomes, all of it, all from single mother households. All outcomes are worse. There's not a single point that you can make where a single parent household, unless we're talking fathers, because they seem to have single parent households that are fathers, seem to have similar or equal outcomes for the children. And even then lose out on the fact that you didn't have a mother. So maybe on the mental side, there are some parts that obviously are less because no single parent can replace two parents. It's asinine and stupid to even think that you could approach the same outcomes in any way whatsoever as a single parent. It's false. But again, it goes against her entire narrative and her entire belief system that because I am a single mother, she is one, is essentially what she just said earlier. So you have to cherry pick data and statistics to make yourself feel better about what you're potentially bringing into the world, a child, and their outcomes from your decisions to leave your man, to be a feminist, to live this progressive lifestyle and not do it the old traditional way of staying married. It goes against your entire life. Of course, she cannot argue this fact.
I would never try and stop Rachel.
There's so much overwhelming data.
Children. That's her choice. That's her choice to do that.
There is so much overwhelming data.
Because that's her choice.
All right, let me bring Emily in. Let me bring Emily in.
Piers knows that.
Emily was trying to say something.
You don't want your daughters and your nieces being forced to stay at home to raise families.
I don't want my kids to be forced to do anything. No, Emily, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm not going to argue data with either of you guys. I'm sure you know more than me, but I can say that my father is my hero and the most important person in my life. And if I didn't have him and he wasn't in the household, I don't know where I would be today. And my girlfriends who were raised without fathers in the household, I do see them struggle in different ways when it comes to dating and all these different things. And it's funny because it's like they do make a point. Like if there was a father in the household supporting you, I think a lot of these issues wouldn't be what they are. So I think there's points to both of these things.
Okay, let me ask Andrew.
But supporting in what way?
Is your name Andrew? Anyway, go ahead, Piers.
Yeah, well, Andrew, I was going to ask Andrew, when Rachel said that she does all domestic chores, is there anything you do? I mean, do you put the bins out? Do you the trash out? I mean, what do you do anything?
I don't do shit. That's what I got a wife for.
A little yard work.
but not only that,
if something there's yard work. That's about it.
Yeah, cars need repair, something like that. But I'm not going to do household chores. That's what I got married for. I don't want to do household chores. Not only that, on top of that, let's just point a couple things out. She's absolutely wrong. Here's what the stats actually say. That if a child is raised in a two-parent household, they're going to have way better outcomes. And if they have a present mother who's more present with them, they're going to have way better outcomes. Every single data point backs this up. The outsourcing of children to public school, especially for 8 hours a day, is absurd. Stop. Let me finish the point. Let me finish the point, and then you can respond. Let me finive the point.
I've got to say, Clementine, as someone who doesn't like being interrupted, you interrupt.
Why is it that you won't let me finish the point?
I got a text message from your producer, Piers, telling me to interrupt if I disagreed with anyone.
Yeah.
So take it up with them.
No, but I think that what's changed since that text message is you've made a point of objecting to being interrupted. So I don't think you can do that.
And yet I keep interrupting. So that's just the state of play.
Why don't you practice what you preach and don't interrupt Andrew when he's trying to finish his point?
Yeah. So look, I've just finished the point.
Would he make a point? He hasn't made one yet.
Yeah, I just did. I made multiple points. All the data points.
Well, he's made the point that he doesn't respect his wife.
You're still not,
because he
lady.
He married a wife
stop talking.
He didn't want to do anything for himself.
You can't stop talking, lady. This is why it should say the 19th under that shirt. You cannot even be quiet long enough to hear a counterpoint. Here's the counterpoints. The data you're citing, you don't have any when it comes to outcomes for children. When it comes to outsourcing, they're raising.
Incorrect.
None.
Incorrect.
No. Show me any that shows that you sending your kids outsourcing.
Which data are you citing?
Would you stop so that I can finish the question?
No, tell me.
I'm trying to at least finish the question. Yes.
You can't even argue. You say, like, the simple point, you can copy paste a bunch of data. You could literally Google right now or even ask ChatGPT, send me all the studies that show that children have a better outcome in a two-parent household. Actually, while they're speaking, I'll do that right now for you guys.
Yeah, okay. Here's the thing. One more time. All data points to the fact that if you outsource the raising of your children, especially when they're young. You can't just stand there
and say all data. You actually have to cite it.
Cite any data that shows.
Say that.
Cite any data ever that shows that you outsourcing the care of your child is good for the child. Any. Yeah, that's right. Nothing. You got, and Stephanie Kuntz doesn't say that. You're lying.
Do you even know who Stephanie Kuntz is?
Yes. You mean the feminist writer?
Stephanie Kuntz is.
The feminist writer, Stephanie Kuntz?
You clearly don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't?
I can tell you.
You're not even interested enough in the topic.
I'm sorry.
You're not even interested enough to respect the topic
who's Stephanie
enough.
Kuntz? Let's make sure we got it right. Who's Stephanie Kuntz?
Stephanie Kuntz is an historian. A world-renowned historian into marriage and the structure of the American family.
And isn't a feminist, right? Isn't a feminist? I just want to make sure we're clear.
I have no idea if she's a feminist or not. I know that she's an historian.
Well, then why would you try to make a refutation about what I'm saying. Clearly you don't know enough about the topic. It's silly.
I'm
only allowed to.
I have some data for her if she wants it.
I'm not allowed to reference historians. Is that we're only? So
if you have a historian who's also a feminist,
clearly only allowed to reference.
If you have a historian who's also a feminist, they're biased, right?
Let me ask you, Clementine.
And then he's going to go on and ask her if she hates men. We'll get into that real quick. But here's some of the academic stuff. And it says, across dozens of large U.S. and international data sets, plus multiple meta-analyses that pull hundreds of studies, the modal finding is straightforward. On average, children raised from birth by two continuously married biological parents score better on virtually every measurable outcome: academic, economic, physical, mental health, and behavioral than peers in single-parent homes. Gaps typically persist, though sometimes shrink after statistically controlling for income, parental education, race, ethnicity, neighborhood factors, suggesting that both resources and family structure itself matter. Academic attainment. For example, review of 47 quasi-experimental and natural experiment studies says children living with two married parents score higher on standardized tests, have fewer behavioral problems, and are more likely to finish high school, matriculate to college, and earn a degree than peers in single-parent households. McLanham and Sandifer, growing up with a single parent. So this is 4 U.S. national surveys. When family background is held constant, youngsters whose parents live apart are 2 times as likely to drop out of high school, 1.5 times as likely to be idle in their early 20s, and twice as likely to become single parent themselves. Another one, this is 92 study, Amato and Keith meta-analysis across 6 domains: scholastic achievement, conduct, psychological adjustment, self-concept, social relations, and parent-child relations. Children of divorce score 0.14 SD lower than children in intact families. 2, economic security and poverty. The current population survey in 2022, the overall poverty rate 5.4% in married couple families versus 24.7% in female householder families. Child poverty less than 18 years old, 6.9% in married couples versus 37% in female households. Here we go. Physical health and insurance coverage. Fragile families and child well-being study. It says kids with married biological parents are more likely to have private health insurance, a regular doctor, and to be rated in excellent health. A child of non-resident or no longer romantic parents are significantly less likely on all 3 outcomes. Then we have mental health. It says nationally represented Korean youth risk behavior survey. This was of almost 60,000 adolescents. You understand? Compared with intact 2-parent peers, adolescents from single mother, single father, or step families show higher odds of depression, suicidal ideation, perceived stress, smoking, alcohol use, and low perceived academic achievement, even after adjusting for socioeconomic status. They go on and on with delinquency and substance abuse and incarceration. All of these statistics are worse off with single-parent households. There is no study that shows in any way that a single mother produces a better outcome in anything than a 2-parent household. The book is entirely closed, shut, and welded on that topic.
So let me ask you,
why are you so obsessed with whether or not she's a feminist or not?
Clementine, let me ask you a question.
She's a historian.
Because it would promote bias.
Because it would be biased.
Let me try and ask a question here. Clementine, do you hate men?
No, of course I don't hate men. What an absurd, reductive question.
Well, why did you tweet? Well, hang on, because I'm about to follow up.
They hate you.
Why in 2020 did you tweet the coronavirus isn't killing men fast enough?
I tweeted that in 2020 as a misguided tweet, but it was actually much of a part of a longer
misguided tweet thread. Coronavirus isn't killing men fast enough. You say you don't hate men.
I apologize for it, Piers.
You thought a deadly pandemic virus wasn't killing men fast enough.
Apologize to men again. Do it again. You haven't apologized to me for saying that you want me to die from the coronavirus.
Well, I would have to consider you a man to apologize you for that,
Say you're sorry. You don't even know what a woman is.
Why would
I
a man is? I don't consider you a man.
Andrew, I would like for her to apologize to me because I do not appreciate her saying that my own husband does not respect me. Of course he respects me. He respects me as a mother and as a wife. He treats me like gold. Who the hell are you to tell me if he respects me or not?
You wouldn't have to get paid for this if you had a husband.
I didn't say that he Where did I?
You did. You said he clearly doesn't respect his wife.
You did say that. I heard you say it.
You mean the piece of shit that you're married to? Yeah, he clearly doesn't respect you.
Oh,
there we go.
Hey,
He
lady.
jokes about how he married you. He doesn't.
He's not the piece of shit in this panel. That would be you, man.
Why
you're the one.
Yeah.
Listen, let's get back to the topic here. You're the one who is insisting that there's no data proving that it's shut up.
I would genuinely. Okay, let me hang on. Time out. I would genuinely like to know. You said it was misguided to say the coronavirus wasn't killing men fast enough. Why would you?
Terrible thing to say.
So why did you?
Terrible thing to say.
No, I understand.
I already said that the time.
Don't worry. Let me finish my question. I do understand it's a terrible thing to say. My question, my bemusement. Why would you say that?
Because I was really frustrated with the articles that I was reading about how the pandemic was. It was derailing women's workplace. It was derailing women's economic trajectories. And there was a specific article that I had read about a woman who had founded her own company. She was the CEO of it. Her husband had taken a sabbatical prior to the pandemic. And within 2 days of childcare closing down, he said, I can't take care of the 4-year-old. And she quit her job to go home and look after the kid.
What's that got to do?
Yeah, what does that have to do with saying all men should perish from COVID faster? Anyways, complete nut jobs. If you guys appreciated today's episode, let me know in the comments below. As usual, thoughts on the statistics I laid out earlier. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.